I stared at the certified letter in my hands, the fancy gold-embossed HOA seal blurring under the kitchen light as I sat at our breakfast nook in Serenity Springs. After 7 years of perfect compliance in this cookie-cutter paradise, the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association had finally decided to come for me. Notice of repeated violations, failure to maintain property standards, it read. The lawn was half an inch too tall after my layoff at the accounting firm. Budget cuts, they'd said with the same plastic smile my old boss gave. Nothing personal. But this felt very personal when the fines started stacking. $250 a day, retroactive, totaling over $4,000 already. The front gate bust. I folded the letter fast, sliding it under the junk mail pile, just as Barbara Kensington's heels clicked up the walkway. At 52, she still looked like the real estate queen who'd ruled the board for a decade. Pearl necklace, pastel cardigan, and that smile that could cut glass while quoting the covenants. "Elena, darling," she sang through the screen door, waving a fresh stack of notices like party invitations. "I thought we should chat in person. Community matters, you know." I forced my voice steady. "Of course, Barbara. Come in." She swept inside like she owned the place, which, in her mind, she basically did. "I heard about the layoff. Word travels fast in Whispering Pines. 15 families affected, but most are bouncing back beautifully. However, she tapped the violation packet on my granite island. "We've been carrying more than our fair share lately. The board discussed it this morning. From now on, it's simple, 50/50ths. You handle your half of every community expense, landscaping assessments, event fees, the new fountain fund, exactly half. No more grace periods. Rules are rules for everyone." I felt that familiar cold creep up my spine. This was the woman who'd once welcomed me with homemade cookies and a lecture on neighborly harmony. Now, she was staring at me the way a banker eyes a foreclosure. "Barbara, I just lost my job. I need time." "No, darling." She cut me off with that sugary laugh. "That's not how we operate here. I've been subsidizing the standards for years. My own pocket for decorations, my time for inspections. If you can't contribute your half, you'll need to make adjustments. Sell the bird bath, maybe, or downsize the flower beds. The covenants are crystal clear." The kitchen fell quiet except for the hum of my overpriced fridge, the one I'd bought to fit the aesthetic. I looked at this woman I'd smiled at during every block party, the one who preached we're all family, and realized I was staring at a stranger in pastel armor. Something shifted inside me. Not rage, that would come later. Not tears. Clarity. Pure, icy clarity about exactly who ran this neighborhood. I could have argued. I could have cried about the layoff. Instead, I smoothed my blouse and nodded. "Okay, 50/50ths it is." Barbara blinked, clearly expecting waterworks. "Wonderful. I knew you'd see reason. I'll email the updated ledger tonight." She air-kissed my cheek and click-clacked away, already texting the board group chat. I could hear the little whooshes. She had no idea what was coming. Neither did I, but the game had just changed. The next morning, Barbara's Mercedes glided out of her driveway at exactly 7:45, same as always. Power walk, fresh highlights, and that confident strut that screamed, "I own the rules." She wouldn't be back until after dark. HOA meetings ran late when she was chair. That gave me nearly 12 hours. I started with the community center, the little brick building everyone called Barbara's Palace. She kept every record there in her locked president's office, filed by color-coded tabs, and scented with her signature lavender potpourri. I'd volunteered for the welcome committee last year. I still had the spare key she'd trusted me with. "Thomas, wait, no, the board never changed locks. Control freaks forget the little things." Inside, the air smelled like fake vanilla and old money. I went straight to the filing cabinets marked Financials, Confidential. According to Barbara, we all split everything 50/50ths now, but the numbers told a different story. Over the past 8 months, there have been miscellaneous disbursements, $800 here, $1,200 there, always cash, always to accounts I didn't recognize. I pulled out my phone and started snapping photos of every ledger page, every receipt. My hands didn't shake. This wasn't emotion anymore. This was facts. The community savings account showed the same pattern. Money vanishing that the board had never voted on. But one line made my stomach flip. An automatic transfer of $2,300 every month to an account ending in 8394. I'd never seen it in any meeting minutes. I dug deeper, rifling through the special projects folder hidden behind the 2023 audit. There was statements for a private checking account in Barbara Kensington's name only. Balance, $142,678. Over $100,000 siphoned while she lectured us about shared sacrifice. The automatic transfers have been running for 3 years. Every time the HOA raised dues for emergency repairs, a chunk quietly landed in Barb's personal account. But that wasn't the worst part. As I scrolled the transactions, I saw charges that made my blood boil. Weekend spa retreats at the same resort she'd told us was too expensive for community events. Jewelry from stores none of us could afford. And one charge that stood out like a neon sign. A couple suite at the lakeside resort the exact weekend. She claimed she was visiting her sick mother in Florida. The receipt said Mr. and Mrs. Kensington plus guest, with champagne and couples massage. I sat back in her ergonomic throne, staring at the evidence spread across her desk. Barbara wasn't just skimming HOA funds. She was living like a queen on our dues while preaching lawn height sermons. And she was doing it with someone. The guest line didn't lie. My phone buzzed. A text from Barbara. Elena dear, hope the job hunt is going well. Remember, the special assessment is due in 10 days. 50/50ths. I stared at the message, then at the statements showing her secret balance big enough to cover every fine in the neighborhood for a decade. She was worried about my bird bath while swimming in stolen community cash. I kept digging. The credit card tied to the HOA showed more. Designer handbags, private wine tastings, hotel stays when she was supposedly inspecting properties. But the real bombshell came in the folder labeled board correspondence. Emails between Barbara and a board member named Rick Delaney, the Silver Fox treasurer who always nodded when she spoke. Messages not just about stolen money, but about keeping Elena quiet and adjusting the books before the state audit. One thread made me physically sick. Rick, the new resident, is asking questions. We need to accelerate the offshore transfer. Already handled, Barb. She's too busy job hunting to notice. By the time she figures it out, we'll have moved another $50K. They were laughing at us. At me. Barbara had been planning to raise dues again next month, blaming inflation and that new family who can't keep their grass short, all while funneling cash to a joint account with Rick. They'd stolen over $340,000 from the neighborhood fund. I photographed everything, creating a digital trail that painted a perfect picture of fraud, hypocrisy, and a very cozy side affair. But I didn't stop there. I opened Barbara's desktop. Password was still Serenity 2023 because she never changed anything that worked for her. The emails went deeper. Plans to blame any shortfall on inactive residents like me, forged minutes, even a draft letter threatening foreclosure on my house if I didn't pay the new equity fee. By the time I heard Barbara's Mercedes purr back in her driveway that evening, I had built a complete case. But I didn't confront her. Instead, I waved from my porch, smiling sweetly, playing the obedient homeowner while my mind raced ahead of her. Barbara thought she held all the cards in Whispering Pines. She was about to learn I'd been studying the rule book longer than she realized. The next morning, I told Barbara I was looking for work and would drop off my half of the assessment check soon. She barely glanced up from her rose bushes, the one she fined everyone else for touching, just gave that condescending nod. Good girl. Community first. If she'd bothered to watch me leave, she would have seen my car heading straight to the small bungalow where my mother still lived on the edge of the development. Carmen Vargas had run her catering business out of that converted garage for 25 years. Even at 9 in the morning, the smell of fresh empanadas and simmering adobo wrapped around me like a hug. Mija, she called when she saw me, wiping floury hands on her apron. You look like you've seen a ghost. Sit. Tell me what that HOA which is done now. I hadn't planned to spill everything, but sitting in her warm kitchen with the radio playing old salsa, the whole story poured out. The layoff, Barbara's 50-50 ultimatum, the secret account, the affair with Rick, the emails plotting to blame me. My mother listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with every detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment, kneading dough like it had personally offended her. I never liked that woman, she finally said. From the day you moved in, something fell off. Too sweet, too perfect. Women like that always have something rotten underneath. I thought about all the subtle warnings my mother had given over the years, how Barbara never helped with neighborhood cleanups, but always took credit, how she steered every conversation back to her vision, how she'd slowly convinced the board to isolate problem residents like me. You saw it, didn't you? I asked. A mother knows, she replied, sitting down and taking my hands. But you're not the scared new homeowner anymore. What you did yesterday, photographing everything, that was smart. That was my daughter using her brain. I don't know what to do with it all, though. I feel so stupid for not noticing sooner. Stop that. Her voice was firm. You trusted the rules. That's not stupid. That's what a community is supposed to be. She's the one who broke it. My mother poured 2 cups of cafe con leche, adding extra sugar the way she always did when I was stressed. Tell me about this Rick man. From the emails, he was the treasurer, married, 2 kids, and apparently very comfortable letting Barbara call the shots while they siphoned funds together. It's not just an affair, I said, showing her screenshots. They're moving money through shell accounts, hiding it before the annual state review. It sounds like they're about to disappear with another $100,000. My mother read the messages, frown deepening. This is serious, Elena. This isn't just about your fines anymore. This could send them both to prison. I know, but if I report it, everything blows up. My house, my reputation. Your house is already under threat, she cut in. Barbara ended any community the day she decided you were expendable. The question is, are you going to let her destroy you, or are you going to fight back? She was right, and we both knew it. But knowing and doing are 2 different things. I need time to think. You need a plan, my mother corrected. And I need help with the big Labor Day block party this weekend. 200 families, full service. You interested? I looked around the kitchen, remembering all the weekends I'd helped her as a teen. Rolling dough, plating dishes, charming guests. It had been good, honest work. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you independence. Pay is good, and I've got more orders than I can handle. Plus, you know the business. You helped build it. For the first time in weeks, I felt something besides dread. I felt hope. There's something else, she continued. My old accountant retired. I need someone trustworthy to handle the books, the taxes, the real numbers. You can't take control of your life. I looked at this woman who'd raised me alone after Dad left, who'd turned a garage into a thriving business through sheer grit. She was offering more than catering gigs. She was offering a way out. When do I start? Right now? She smiled. We've got prep work. Working in my mother's kitchen felt like coming home. My hands remembered the rhythms, chopping, stirring, timing sauces perfectly. More importantly, the work gave me something Barbara's rules never could, purpose that belonged to me. But even while I prepped for the block party, my mind kept circling back to those ledgers and emails. 3 days of side-by-side work with my mother gave me the clarity I needed. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table pretending to job hunt while Barbara's porch light stayed on late, probably counting stolen cash. But I wasn't browsing Indeed. I was cross-referencing every transaction I'd photographed, and what I found made my blood run cold. The pattern went back 4 full years. Barbara hadn't just skimmed for 2. Every special assessment, every holiday decoration fund, every emergency repair fee, chunks had quietly slid into her and Rick's private accounts. The emails with Rick revealed worse. They weren't just lovers stealing from the HOA, they were planning to blame the coming shortfall on non-compliant residents, meaning me, and use the chaos to push through higher dues before anyone noticed. One thread made me grip my phone so hard it creaked. "Rick, Elena's asking for the full ledger. We need to accelerate. Don't worry. She's too busy crying over her lawn to connect dots. By the time she does, we'll be on that cruise we talked about." They've been laughing at my struggle while planning their getaway. Barbara had been grooming the board to vote her lifetime president next month, right after she drained the last of the reserves. The 50-50 ultimatum wasn't about fairness. It was covered to make me look like the deadbeat, so no one would believe me when the money vanished. I screenshot everything, time-stamped every note. But I needed more. I spent the next hours researching state HOA oversight laws, whistleblower protections, and how to report financial fraud in homeowners associations. By 3 a.m., I had compiled an airtight file. Bank records, emails, transaction trails linking Barbara and Rick to over $340,000 in stolen dues. Enough to get them both investigated, removed, and possibly charged. But I wasn't ready to drop the hammer yet. Barbara thought she was playing chess with the neighborhood. She had no idea I'd been studying her moves the whole time. Tomorrow I would start building my own board. And when I moved, she'd never see it coming. 2 weeks in my new routine, I'd fallen into a perfect rhythm of quiet rebellion. Every morning, I kissed my mother goodbye after the early prep shift and told Barbara I was networking. Instead, I drove back to her garage kitchen, where I was quickly becoming the secret weapon behind every catered event. The Labor Day block party had been a massive success. My mother's food, my spreadsheets keeping costs on her budget, and 3 more neighborhood gigs rolled in. The real work happened after dark. I'd opened my own LLC, Vargas Community Consulting, using my mother's address so Barbara's spies wouldn't notice the mail. Within days, I landed my first client, a young couple 2 streets over who needed help fighting an unfair fine. The irony tasted sweeter than any of Barbara's fake lemonade at meetings. While she thought I was desperately job hunting, I was quietly building something that could out-earn my old corporate salary and help neighbors she'd been crushing. "You look different," Barbara said one evening, cornering me at the mailbox with that fake concerned smile. "More relaxed, almost like you're not worried about the assessment anymore." I shrugged, flipping through junk mail. "I guess I'm adjusting to the new normal." "Good. I was worried you might do something dramatic, like most of these entitled homeowners do when they don't get their way." The casual cruelty in her voice made my jaw tighten, but I kept my face neutral. "What will be the point? You made the rules clear. I have to live with them." Barbara's satisfied little smirk told me she thought she'd won. "Exactly. I'm glad you're finally seeing things my way." If only she knew how clearly I was seeing everything now. That night, after she turned off her porch light, I made the call I'd been planning. Detective Maria Lopez worked white-collar crimes for the county. I'd found her name through state HOA fraud cases. "Detective Lopez, my name is Elena Vargas. I have evidence of significant embezzlement inside the Whispering Pines HOA. Her voice was all business. "What kind of evidence?" "Bank records, email chains, transaction histories showing over $300,000 diverted from community funds. The president and treasurer are involved." A pause. "Are you a board member?" "No. I'm just a resident who got tired of the 50-50 game." Another longer pause. "Can you come in tomorrow morning?" "Bring everything. I'll be there." The next morning I told Barbara I had a networking breakfast. She barely looked up from her phone, probably texting Rick. Detective Lopez was sharper than I expected, mid-40s, eyes that missed nothing. She listened as I laid out the printed emails and ledgers across her desk like a murder board. "This is extremely detailed," she said finally. "How long have you known?" "I discovered it 2 weeks after the 50-50 ultimatum. Started looking into the books and found all of this." "And you're certain these emails are authentic?" "I took the screenshots directly from the president's computer. Metadata included." Detective Lopez studied the pile, making notes. "Mrs. Vargas, what's your goal here? This will almost certainly lead to criminal charges. My goal is justice. Barbara has been stealing from every family while preaching rules. She's planning to pin the shortfall on me and disappear. I want it stopped. You understand once we start, there's no going back? I understand. She nodded. We'll move carefully. If she suspects anything, she'll scrub evidence. Can you keep gathering intel without raising alarms? She thinks I'm a broke homeowner begging for mercy. She has no clue what I'm capable of. Detective Lopez smiled for the first time. Perfect. Here's how we play it. She outlined the plan. I would keep feeding her new data while her team quietly subpoenaed the real bank records. One more thing, she added as I stood to leave. You mentioned she's threatening your house. Have you thought about protecting yourself legally? I'm already on it. That afternoon, I met with No. HOA defense attorney Rachel Kim, recommended by my mother. Rachel specialized in taking down rogue boards. Based on what you've shown me, she said after reviewing the file, we've got leverage most residents only dream of. In fraud cases, the court can dissolve the entire board and award restitution directly to affected homeowners. We could force her to repay every dime plus penalties. For the first time in weeks, I felt real hope. 3 weeks later, Barbara was getting careless. Success had always made her arrogant, but now her grip on the neighborhood felt bulletproof. She started parading Rick around more openly, just a colleague helping with the budget, she'd say at potlucks. I played my part perfectly, the grateful, struggling resident who smiled and nodded at every new rule. Rick's coming to the next board meeting, she announced one afternoon while I was weeding my front yard under her watchful eye. We're finalizing the new special assessment. You want to be there, Elena, show community spirit. Of course, I smiled. I'll bring snacks. What Barbara didn't know was that Detective Lopez had asked me to encourage exactly these slip-ups. The more comfortable they got, the more they'd talk. The board meeting arrived and Rick turned out to be exactly the slick partner I'd expected. Expensive watch, rehearsed charm, zero shame. They sat side by side at the head table, discussing budget shortfalls in coded language while the room nodded along like sheep. I served my mother's empanadas and took mental notes. The breakthrough came when Rick stepped outside for a private call and left his tablet on the table. Barbara immediately picked it up, frowning at the screen. The offshore transfer is delayed, she muttered under her breath. Problem? I asked innocently from the refreshment table. Just treasure things. Nothing you'd understand, dear. When Rick returned, he looked rattled. We need to talk, he whispered to Barbara, glancing my way. Elena was just cleaning up, she said dismissively. Weren't you? I gathered plates and retreated to the kitchenette, but left the door cracked. Their voices carried. The state auditor called today, Rick hissed. They want records back 6 years. Impossible. We wiped the trails. Apparently not well enough. Someone tipped them. My heart raced. Detective Lopez had warned the net was tightening. Who would know enough? Barbara demanded. I don't know, but we moved the rest tonight or we're finished. I kept stacking plates, hands steady despite the adrenaline. They were panicking, which meant mistakes were coming. What about Elena? Rick asked. If this leaks, she'll connect everything. Barbara's laugh sent ice down my spine. Elena's not a threat. She's too busy trying to keep her lawn alive to figure anything out. Trust me, I know my residents. She's harmless. After the meeting, Barbara was unusually chatty with me, probably feeling guilty about the conversation she thought I hadn't heard. You know, I only want what's best for the community, right? She said as I helped load her car. I looked at the woman who just plotted to steal more while calling me harmless. And I smiled. Of course, Barbara. We're all in this together. That night, I called Detective Lopez and reported every word. This is the nail we needed, she said. We move tomorrow. You ready for what comes next? I looked at my perfectly trimmed lawn, the one I'd paid my neighbor's kid to cut with my new consulting money, and at Barbara's dark house across the street. I'm ready. Good. Because tomorrow, everything changes. I hung up and stared at the ceiling, thinking about how Barbara had called me harmless just hours earlier. She was about to learn the most dangerous homeowners are the ones you underestimate. The trap was set, and she had walked straight into it. The morning started like any other HOA dictatorship day. Barbara's Mercedes backed out at 7:45. Rick's BMW right behind her, probably heading to finalize the transfer before the auditor arrived. They had no idea Detective Lopez and her team were already parked 2 blocks away with warrants and forensic accountants. I went through my usual routine of pretending to job hunt while actually finalizing my mother's new contract for the fall festival. But today felt different. Today, the empire Barbara had built on lies and stolen dues was about to collapse. The call came at 11:42 a.m. Mrs. Vargas, Detective Lopez. It's done. Both Barbara and Rick are in custody. The FBI is freezing every account as we speak. I sat in my mother's kitchen surrounded by the smell of fresh bread and her humming, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Pure relief. What happens now? Now the neighborhood gets its money back and you get your life back. Barbara called me from the station 3 hours later. Her voice shook, all the pastel confidence stripped away by handcuffs and felony charges. Elena, this is all a terrible misunderstanding. You have to help me. Call my lawyer. Post something, please. I let her talk for a full minute, listening to the begging and empty promises. When she finally paused, I spoke calmly. No. What do you mean no? Elena, I'm the president. I helped you. You helped yourself to $340,000 of our money. I know everything, Barbara. The secret account, the offshore transfers, the weekend getaways with Rick, the emails planning to blame me. All of it. Silence. I could almost hear her calculating. Elena, I can explain. Explain it to the judge. And to the rest of the board when they see the evidence I turned over. Evidence? You went through my office. Her voice cracked. We can work this out. I made mistakes, but you didn't make mistakes. You made choices. You chose to steal for 4 years. You chose to cheat on your husband with the treasurer. You chose to threaten my home so you could disappear rich. And you chose to call me harmless. I could hear her breathing hard, finally realizing the quiet resident she'd bullied had just ended her reign. How did you know? I have a degree in financial analysis, remember? The same one you mocked while you built your little criminal kingdom. I didn't waste it. Elena, please. I hung up. That evening, Rachel Kim called with news that made me grin. The criminal charges give us massive leverage. Since Barbara used HOA funds for personal crimes, the court can dissolve the board and award every affected homeowner full restitution plus penalties. We're talking the entire reserve fund returned, her personal assets seized, and you, as the whistleblower, protected from any retaliation. She'll lose the house, the cars, everything. 3 days later, I stood in the county courthouse as Barbara was arraigned on embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy charges. She looked smaller in the orange jumpsuit, the pearl necklace gone, her perfect hair flat under the fluorescent lights. Rick sat beside her, pale and shaking. When Barbara spotted me in the gallery, her eyes filled with something that might have been regret. Too late. After the hearing, I drove back to Whispering Pines. The neighborhood felt different, lighter. I walked through my house planning how I'd finally plant the vegetable garden I'd always wanted but Barbara had banned. My phone rang. My mother. How do you feel, Mija? I stood in the kitchen where Barbara had delivered her 50-50 ultimatum 6 weeks earlier and smiled. Free. Good, because I have news. The neighborhood association just voted you interim treasurer. They want you to fix the books. And the Riverside Resort wants us for their entire wedding season. 50 events. We're expanding. Partners now. Equal partners. I looked out at the garden. I'd finally have time to enjoy. Partners sounds perfect. 6 months later, Barbara was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. Rick got 5. The court ordered full restitution. Every dime returned to the HOA fund plus interest and penalties that stripped them both clean. I kept my house, gained the respect of the entire neighborhood, and watched the new board vote in real rules that actually made sense. But more importantly, I kept the lesson Barbara never meant to teach me. Never underestimate the quiet homeowner who has nothing left to lose. My consulting business exploded after the scandal. Every family in Whispering Pines suddenly wanted help fighting unfair fines or understanding their rights. My mother and I turned Varda's community consulting into the go-to service for anyone tired of HOA tyranny. We even started a podcast, HOA Nightmares, where residents called in with their own Karen stories. The first episode, How I Took Down the 50/50 Queen. It went viral. The neighborhood changed too. No more ridiculous lawn police. Families planted gardens, flew flags, painted doors whatever color they wanted. And every time someone new moved in, I made sure to drop off a welcome basket with a little note. The rules are for everyone, including the people who make them. Barbara's old house sold at auction. The new owners, a young couple with 2 kids, tore down her no vegetables sign the day they closed. I helped them plant tomatoes the same weekend. One evening, I stood on my porch watching the sunset paint the cul-de-sac gold. My mother pulled up with a tray of fresh empanadas. You did good, Mija. I took the tray and hugged her. We did good. Across the street, the new neighbors waved. No one was measuring grass anymore. No one was afraid to speak up. Serenity Springs finally felt like the community it had pretended to be. Barbara had been right about one thing. Everything was split 50-50 now. She got the consequences of her choices, and the rest of us got everything else. Our money, our dignity, and the freedom to live without a pastel tyrant watching our every blade of grass. It was the fairest deal this neighborhood had ever made. And somewhere in federal prison, I hope Barbara is finally learning the one rule she never wrote down. When you treat people like they're beneath you, eventually they rise up and show you exactly how tall they can stand. The end.